A happy bunch tonight, and welcome to the February 13th work session for the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. As usual, the next item on the agenda is an opportunity for citizens to make comments for items that are not on the agenda. And typically what we do is ask speakers to present a speaker's card which has their name and what they want to talk on. I have no speaker cards, so I assume there are no citizen comments. But I do want to move to one special thing which we need to put on the front of the program. We have a number of guests tonight. I can't believe it, but they're eager to leave here. Something that's somewhere that's going to be more fun than being at a Board of Mayor and Alderman work session. I can't believe it. But I'm going to turn this over to Pearl to handle it.
Thank you, Mayor Moore, and all of you all here and those that are home watching. Again, we are very happy to present a group of our student ambassadors from Bad Soden, Germany, our sister cities. I will turn the program over to the people who really have been doing the hard work on this student exchange. Kim Cannon, would you please stand and come to the mic? And Kim served on the board of directors for sister cities of Franklin and Williamson County. She has put together a team with other board members, and they have really made a successful student exchange this year for our Bad Soden ambassadors. So take it from here, young lady.
I thank my fellow committee members, Tricia Fitzgerald and Tamara Pence-Phillips. And now I would like Ms. Betsy Taylor and Ms. Tad Hammerlich. They are chaperones this year. And I'd like to introduce Ms. Christine Dos Santos. She is the chaperone from Bad Soden. And they'll just introduce themselves, and then we'll have the students say their name and their host, and then we'll let you get on with your meeting. And thank you so much to the City of Franklin for all your support of Sister Cities. My family has had a wonderful 2 weeks, as have the other host families that are here in the audience tonight.
Could you have the host family stand, the one that's here? Just
Could
stand.
the host families please stand?
These are our local citizens that has opened their doors to these students that has come from abroad, and their sons and daughters will be going later on this summer to Bad Soden. Thank you all.
Hi, I'm Betsy Taylor. I actually teach French over at Franklin High School, but have gotten the great privilege and opportunity to chaperone this group last summer and again this summer, and to host our German teacher again this year. It's been a wonderful experience, and I just want to thank all of you for this opportunity. Words cannot express how important I think these types of exchanges are, the bridges that we build, the community connections we make. I think this is what makes our world that much better, and it's been a privilege to work with these young people who are incredible, and I'm very much looking forward to going to Bad Soden and representing Franklin with them this summer in June, along with my colleague, Tad Hammerich. So introduce him. He's coming along this year because we have such a large group. So I don't know if you want to say a couple words.
I'm Tad Hemwark. I'm the German teacher at Independence High School, and this is my first year chaperoning. And I just want to say thank you for providing this life-changing opportunity for these kids, not only the kids of Williamson County and Franklin, but also the children and the students in Bad Soden for this cultural exchange. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christina Dos Santos. I've chaperoned the German students to Franklin, and I really want to thank you for this exceptional, awesome experience we are having here. And I think we can all agree that people in the South are extremely welcoming, extremely friendly, that we find a lot of gentlemen here that open the doors for us, and we are not really used to this, so this has been a really, life-changing experience as well for me, and I'm so grateful that we have this program of Sister Cities, and I'm very much looking forward to welcome our partners in June. Yeah, we're already in the planning process.
So these are our students. If you all just want to walk through,
Yeah.
you gentlemen, we'll just real quick introduce just your first and last name, and then we'll.
I'm Tim Stepinski, and Ricardo here is my student.
Speak into the microphone so
Yeah.
everybody can hear. Yeah, or pull it up so that.
I'm Tim Stepinski, and this is my student Ricardo here.
Hello, I'm Ricardo Reismann from Germany.
Hi, I'm Lea and I'm also from Germany.
Hi, I'm Jenna Wygand, and this is my student, Nina Tauber.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Nina Tauber, and I was hosted by Jennifer and her family.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Lowe, and I live here in Franklin, and this is my exchange student.
Hi, I'm Nina Spahn, and I'm from Germany.
Hi, I'm Savannah. I'm living in Franklin. This is my student.
Come on up. Yeah.
Come on up.
Hi, my name is Linnea Schweser, and I'm from Germany.
Hi, my name's Caitlin Smith, and this is my exchange student.
Hi, my name is Melissa Osbicher.
Hello, my name is Cormac Brennan, and this is my exchange student.
Hello, my name is Julian Wignesson.
Hello, I'm Amelia Cannon, and this is my German exchange student.
Hi, I'm Clara Hilbig from Germany.
Good afternoon, my name is Markus Schmidt, and my host family are the Menkos. That's not my exchange student, but...
Hi, I'm Griffin, and sadly, my exchange student is sick right now.
Oh. Too much food.
Hi, I'm Eden Williams, and May is my exchange student.
Hi, my name is Mark Niederhausen, and I'm staying with Eden.
Hi, I'm Justus Feser. I'm the last one. I was hosted by the Korea family, and my exchange partner Jackson isn't here at the moment. I think he has got something pretty important with baseball going.
Very good. Thank you all so much. These exchanges create lifelong experiences and relationships. We have students who have gone several years ago that are still communicating and visiting with each other. So thank you so much for coming in. Tomorrow you have a big party, I hear, right? Okay. Valentine's party.
All right.
Okay.
Farewell dinner.
Okay, farewell dinner. Thank you all so much. Thank you. At this point, I think we're going to give them an opportunity to exit. Unless someone has some comments.
Unless they want to stay for the work session.
Unless there's some comments from other board members.
No, it sounds like they've had a good time in America. Let's cut them loose.
You don't want to taint that?
No, this doesn't need to be part of their memory.
I know, off to the press
that's
game.
great.
Okay, yeah.
Teaching some chants.
It's all your fault.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, as they exit, I'll read the caption for the next item, which is consideration of a long-term special event permit for the Pilgrimage Music and Cultural Festival at the park at Harlansdale Farm.
So this is a continuation, essentially, of the arrangement that we have had the last 3 years with the Pilgrimage Music and Cultural Festival. It does provide for a 5-year agreement, but it does have an annual review of the event with both our special events team and opportunity for board input along the way as well. So that's what we're bringing forward to you tonight. The event organizers are here as well. If you have any questions for them, we did place this on both agendas because we're a lot of feverish planning going on, and we'd like to keep that rolling, but welcome any questions you have or comments you have for us tonight.
When are they going to reveal the lead acts?
So we'll be announcing. Thank you, everybody. We're glad to
Come
be
over
here.
to the
Come to the
microphone,
mic,
Brandon.
You have a bigger audience.
We need to boost our Franklin TV ratings. So
I don't have as good an accent as those young people had, but I'll adjust the microphone. Brant Wood. I'm a co-producer with Kevin, and I'm here with Jackie as well from our team. We are super appreciative to be under permit for year 4 of Pilgrimage. Time has flown, and yes, we have just as exciting of a lineup already booked, and are feverishly planning yet another festival with all all the excitement and attention and from everything from the safety aspect to the ingress and egress and to the lessons we learn with the pedestrian piece and the bicyclers and the car parking on and off site and all those important logistical pieces that we now spend an entire year working on. We do tabletop exercises with the police and emergency and fire department, and we just, we know, you guys know we do that, but it's important for us to, whenever given the opportunity, for you to know that our desire to be an important long-term player in the community comes with the absolute clear focus of what the objectives are, which is a safe, fun, important event. You know, music festivals proliferate around the world nowadays, and yet we have endeavored to create a unique one that befits this community, one that is very good quality of entertainment, but run with attention to detail, and I hope that's apparent when you guys visit the festival. We can always use cooler weather, but that's one of the variables we'll live with. We are very appreciative of the 5-year arrangement that we've worked on really since day one. We have entered into agreements with our vendors and our employees and our banks and our financing that is also of this term. That's given us the opportunity to cut better deals, to get better economics, and to really leverage the experience we have on more than just a one-year basis. And so this is a critical component of pilgrimage, and it's frankly something we greatly appreciate you guys understanding and considering. Any questions, of course, I'm happy to address.
We appreciate you releasing the names of the stars. That was very good.
Did I do that? It must have been
very
under my
evasive.
breath.
Any questions from the board? Alderman Berger?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
How is that parking going for you this year? It was much better. And if you overcome any of the challenges you still have with that, or?
So we did have some, you know, when Justin was still on stage, lots of people were leaving, and that was earlier than we expected, and so we had to stop the South Lots traffic to get all the pedestrians out. It was a safety move of which one, you know, do we make the cars wait while the folks go, and that hour wait was something we heard about. We fixed it on Sunday. You know, the traffic plan works to where the pedestrians and the cars do not cross one another. And that, with 24,000 people there on Sunday night, it worked perfectly. The site was empty in 41 minutes, just as it's supposed to. So that plan is, you know, as Chief Horton allows, that plan is still the same. We did add Bicentennial Park to the off-site lots this last year. That was a huge success. It's a short walk. Obviously, we're looking forward to the bridge that will be there one day. We park, for the first time, Liberty Elementary was fully parked. We parked 850 cars at that site. We used the trolley to bring people to and from the festival. Still a third of our attendees walk, which is amazing. You guys have given us that pedestrian right-of-way that has provided what festivals dream of, which is a short walk from you know, the center of town. We do park 3,200 cars on site in 2 lots, plus all the staff, plus all the artists, plus the tour buses, plus the RVs, plus all the vendors. The site is amazing that it holds that many cars. You know, it's logistically something we have to really be mindful of how we load the site and unload it. But to answer your question, it's, you know, we learn each year, but I think we'll continue to suggest people walk and ride their bikes. The site, we won't be parking more cars there, but we get better at how we park them.
How about the bike parking?
So the bike parking, we moved it from one part of the front yard to the other just because it was better for the egress. On the ingress, we're debating on whether to put them back in the front yard where those pilgrimage letters go, or do we put them on the box office side. We parked probably 2,500 bikes.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Okay.
A fantastic number of bicycles. So we also had pedicabs working, and that was something people took advantage of.
I think the only last question I would have for you, is there anything that you really need to improve, or anything you need from the city that would help you in making this safer, more successful, even whatever?
So thank you for asking that. You know, I think the things we're most excited about, and Monique and Eric can tell you when we visit, which we do often, the bridge over the Harpeth and the sidewalks are, you know, are the on the ultimate wish list of infrastructural improvements, those two pieces provide us an opportunity to get people to the site in a safer, more efficient way. So, and when we have the time and resources to put into those efforts and personnel and we would encourage those, whatever the process is of those, to be as expedient as possible within the the normal range of how you plan and fund these pieces. But those are the two things that I think we're the most excited about. The authorities in y'all's on your team, are continuing to work with us on, being super mindful of safety and weather and other incidences that happen, and we double down on the way that we watch the event, the way that we surveil it, the way that we do tabletop exercises to have contingencies on any possible situation, just as every good crowd producer or event producer considers. But I couldn't ask for better participation there either. There's the Parks Department also is really as good a partner as I could ask for. So besides some infrastructural pieces and the support you guys give us with what's on the table now, I think we couldn't ask for a better partnership.
Thanks for that information.
Alderman Barnhill.
I'm going to ask Eric a question indirectly. Who is the person within the city who listened last year and listened to the number of issues and is coordinating with this particular group to resolve those issues? Let me give you my personal issue, my personal experience. Okay, I was about 2 hours once I got on my catcher westbound to get into the event. I mean, to be exact, I think it was 2 hours and 15 minutes that I sat there. That does not function. And I'm just saying, who does.
Well, we have a special events team. Monique helps chair that,
Okay.
But we have the police and fire represented, and I can tell you there were changes made that day and into Sunday where those problems did not reoccur the next day. So there are some things that, with a larger crowd and a different load-in this year that affected us, but we were trying to react and respond, and that night and into Sunday morning, looked at adjustments we could make to help prevent that from happening, and I think we're in a better position to have learned from that experience so that does not happen in the way that it did on that Saturday.
And we'll be making some adjustments this year too. That should help.
And last year we granted, I think, 25,000, and then we raised it. We were asked to raise to 28, and I would suggest to you that Saturday there was absolutely 28,000 people there. So it's possible. It's possible. I don't want to say it's there yet, but it's possible to outgrow this if we continue to add and add on, because there was a ton of people there that Saturday afternoon and Saturday night, and I'm not trying to. Oh, and that's a compliment to you.
Yes,
I mean,
sir.
it's not a negative, but we have to look at that, because we know what we listened to and what we heard from the citizens around there and throughout, as far as the impact on them. And I just want to know what we were doing, how we were looking at that. If you're satisfied that we're addressing some of those issues or all of those issues, then I don't have a particular problem in a 5-year contract or a 5-year agreement.
When again, you're going to have an annual opportunity to review and ask these kinds of questions every year so that the event can continue to get better. I will say Sunday, while it was not as big as Saturday, was still the second largest day we've ever had by far. It was 24,000, and we were able to load out in 40 minutes, and the load-in, I heard of no issues on load-in. I don't know if anybody else did, but a little different disbursement through the day, so that did help us, but it was still a very large crowd, and especially compared to the 2 prior years, both Saturday and Sunday were significantly larger than anything we had seen in the prior 2 years.
And I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead, and then I'm going to go to Alderman McClendon.
And I don't think staff would recommend increasing until we're sure that we can do more on site. So.
Yeah, we're going to watch that carefully.
Alderman McClendon.
I was there Saturday, I'd be shocked if there weren't more than 30,000 people. It was a huge crowd. I'm concerned that it has already outgrown our venue. I thought it was a great event, but it was, and I know some of these things are logistics that the producers want to prevent, but you know, people standing in line to get food and water for 2 hours or an hour, the vendors running out of things on site, all that tells me that there were far more people there than anyone had been told to provide for. The water stations were too few and too far between. It was too big for the infrastructure that had been provided last year. I sat for well over an hour trying to get off the site because there was a bum rush of pedestrians. Well, that was predictable. That was a foreseeable event, unless, of course, there were way more people than 28,000. So I'm concerned about the sheer number of attendees. I will not be supporting an increase until I've been to this thing and seen it run at whatever number we pick. I'm not even sure I would approve 25,000 again. So you know, I don't want to rain on this thing literally or figuratively, but it was too big last year for the infrastructure that was on hand, and I don't know whether or not that's solvable on that site. I would never recommend or permit drive up on demand parking on site again. That should never have been an option for people to think they could show up on festival day and somehow magically park on site. That should be, you either bought the ticket and you're allowed to drive down Franklin Road to park, or you shouldn't be anywhere near the gates in your car, period. That was a disaster. Getting off after the concert, which, by the way, was well past 8:30. You don't really want us unplugging you at 8:30, so let's get that clear. This event permit says 8:30. That's not realistic. We need, you know, we can't ask the people that live here who aren't thrilled by it to watch us approve something that says 8:30 and then JT doesn't go on till after that. And then finally, this application memo says that we're going to close the park for over 3 weeks to anyone who lives here. I can't do that. I don't know how long it takes to set up and break down, but I'm not willing to close Harlansdale Park to the citizens of Franklin for 3 weeks so that we can throw a festival. We didn't buy it for that. Matter of fact, there are plenty of people who would be horrified that we're even doing this on that site to begin with. I was here when we had the conversations about why we were buying it and what we weren't going to do there. And about the only thing we haven't done that we said we wouldn't do is put lights up. And if we keep going this direction, that's going to be, we're going to have pressure put on us to do that too. So I've got a lot of concerns about this event. I thought it was a great event. I enjoyed myself. And I know a lot of people enjoyed it, and I am not suggesting that we should not figure out how to have a great event like this. However, it overwhelmed its infrastructure, and the enthusiasm for it is going in the same direction again. And I am not willing to close the park for 3 weeks so that we can do this. We got to figure out. I understand that we can't just expect people to show up and have a festival erected overnight, but shutting it down for the entire month of September is not okay with me.
Alderman Blanton, what are you going to say?
Yeah, I just was going to say, and I think when this came up, I don't know when the first time we talked about the 5-year window, I understand needing to plan, and I think there's importance to that, to securing vendors and sponsors, but I'm just as much comfortable with 3 years, and I had said that previously. I know I was the only one that said that, but I mean, when you get feedback from people, I feel like that shows that we've got more of a grasp on, you know, what's going to happen. And I see it still as 5 years, which I understand that too, but I don't know if we're gonna do that with Main Street Festival and Pumpkin Fest and Dickens and all of those things too. So, I'm just kind of curious as how it remained at 5, but.
That's the request. It does still have an annual review. So it's really a 5-year contract, but it's got an annual update and opportunity for you all to make a decision on how you want to proceed. So, yeah, we looked at it that way. It does meet the threshold, as do the large Main Street events like Main Street Festival, Dickens, Pumpkin Fest. They all hit that threshold in terms of the size and scale, and that they have a track record of being in the community and operating that allow them to make that ask. So I think you could see that coming.
Right, Dickens has been around 30 years. Main Street's been around.
Right.
I don't even know. Tori or Emily could probably answer that, but it's a unique situation, and so 3 felt better to me than 5 because a lot of life can happen in 5 years. So.
And when we bring those other events to you this year, they'll be for 5 years as well.
Okay.
Alderman Bransford, and then.
Just to comment to the
Yes,
planners
ma'am.
here, are you all comfortable with the long wait and running out of food and water? I mean, what?
Yes, ma'am.
You
So
comfortable?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
We doubled the food and beverage from year 2 to 3. We knew the population very well. We took 1,500 tickets down. We chose not to sell them because we didn't want people coming to buy tickets. All the parking sold out in advance, so you could only get to the lots with a parking pass, which we mailed to you. So those things didn't prevent lines at food and beverage because people were even more, they ate a couple of meals, which we planned for, but there were lines, even though we doubled the linear footage of food and beverage. We doubled the water infrastructure on Saturday, and that still didn't meet demand. So we doubled it again on Sunday, and that did meet the demand. So we react quickly. We do make, in this case, we could have tripled the food and beverage and probably been where we needed to be. We added points of sale, little square computers on Sunday to add more stations for purchase. But as planners, we're not comfortable living with lines or traffic or any of those pieces. Those don't create goodwill. Those create questions. And so our job as producers, who will be here a long, long time, if we all agree that this event is something that the community wants, will be to solve for waits, to solve for water, to create more shade, to try to add the pieces of crowd experience value that we started this thing for. And that's why we're doing it. I mean, it's something that other communities that are lucky enough to have good producers who sweat these details enjoy greatly and look at it on the calendar as something that is very much anticipated. We're strictly here to do that, but also to listen to the constructive comments that we're hearing and to put those, to go to the mat for how to figure out, working with your team and the authorities here, of how to make this a fantastic event. We're going to have a learning curve. These are things that no matter how we try to plan, there's this piece of bike barricade or this particular vendor ran out of something, and we know we're going to hear about that first. And that's, we signed up for this, but we also signed up for the opportunity to correct it and to improve. And that's something you guys have given us the opportunity to do. And we, we're sort of stewards of this thing, and we hope to be around a long time and to continue to get better at this.
Alderman Barnhill.
The 3-week closure.
Yes, ma'am.
Talk about that a little bit. Does it take 3 weeks to close the?
Oh, yes. So we start loading in the site. The heavy equipment starts coming in a week and a half before the event. We add some weather days, so 3 weeks is really a weather contingency, variables that mean, a lot of rain, the river comes up. Those are things we allowed pedestrians and park users and dog park users onto the site all the way into the actual show week. Okay. Only when the big stage pieces come in do we ask the park to be closed. And Lisa and Monique and we all meet and we say, okay, let's close it on Tuesday. We reopen it next Tuesday. So it's closed to the public is a week, maybe 10 days, and that's strictly because we just look at the safety implications of having forklifts moving around. But the 3 weeks is really the most outside chance that weather's not in our favor and the grounds are wet. But no, for the citizens to come see us build the event is actually a positive thing. We just have a point in which we're not comfortable with their safety.
Thank you.
Alderman
ma'am.
Barnhill.
The only other comment I would make is that it is a compliment, because I thought the crowd was well-behaved. I thought that the crowd was responsive to the show, and I didn't see any activity that I thought would be out of the ordinary, and I wandered around, because
Yes, sir.
you hear one set of music over here and one over here, and you wander in between the two. You don't know which one you're listening to, but I would compliment you on that, and the people who attended. So,
47% of the folks are from the Williamson and Davidson County, and with the majority of that are local. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we can get a good capacity up without needing to park all their cars, because people are walking from home. Anybody that comes 3 or more for a car parks free. We don't charge, just to encourage carpooling and greenness. 3 or more in a car, boom, you're parking free. And that's something that, is one of the things we do to try to just put that friendly foot forward.
All right, we got one last comment.
Real quick, how you handle growth and where you top it off, I think are going to be some of your discussions that you really need to have for the future of the project, of the venue. And, we all want to get it right, and I know you do, and I know you have to get it right to be successful, so, I mean, that's a given. But you're absolutely right. There's a learning curve, and I think we ought to be working with you, Monique, and everyone ought to be working with you to get it right and to solve the challenges that are going to come. And these are all good comments tonight to hear. But I think it's a perfect place for this venue, and I want to see you stay. And there are going to have to be more controls in place as you go along, as you grow a little bit, as you tweak this a little bit, and address the issues and concern. But I want you to stay, because that venue, that space, that property is the perfect place for this kind of thing, and we need to utilize our property that we spent millions of dollars on to allow our public to come and enjoy it and to have something like this going on. And I just wanted to tell you that I was fully supportive of that, and I think that I'm comfortable with the 5 years, because every year we get to review it and we get to speak into it and talk to you about this, and you get to bring us your challenges as well, because I want to hear I think we all need to hear those. Staff needs to hear that, and we need to be purposely working with you to make this first thing is safety all around. Safety involves making sure there's enough water and things of that nature as well. So thanks for all the work that you do on it, and let us know how we can help you as a not only a government entity, but as a community as well.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. And all the comments are, of course, constructive and helpful. My team and I go to emergency planning events in Las Vegas. We attended one in December. We're going to a weather emergency planning event in Oklahoma City next month, all regarding festivals and festival operations. And so we're constantly making sure that we're applying best practices and that we've got safety first and last in mind.
Thank you.
And we've kept the permit the same numbers as last year too, just to be very mindful of some of the things last year that we fixed on Sunday. We want to show those in practice again. So I think we're approaching this conservatively, as you would expect, or as you would wish. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Pick up the pace. Thank you, Brant. Next is a discussion regarding downtown parking enforcement report.
Ask
Christine.
Paul and some of our team to come on up. We have a couple different things that have come together. You have the parking study that was shared with you earlier in the year, but we've also done a review with our internal team of the ordinances that are on the books that deal with parking, some of which date back to 1976. So there is a need to update some of that, but also reflect some of the direction or ideas that came out of the parking study, in particular some that were identified as short-term opportunities when we talked about this a couple meetings ago. So we've sort of blended those together. Christine's going to walk you through that and present some elements of that, and then we want your feedback on how you'd like to proceed and some of the timing that may be involved with some of that as well. So take it away, Christine.
Thank
Thank you, Eric. I want to introduce a couple of my colleagues with me that were on the parking enforcement study group. David Prather, lieutenant from our police department, and he's involved with supervises the enforcement for parking in downtown, and then of course Paul Hosen from our engineering department. And we really looked at parking enforcement. We had a fairly limited scope in what we were looking at, but we did have a group that represented the several departments who are interested parties: city court clerk, our police department, law department, as well as IT, and then engineering and streets joined us as we got to that point. But we were looking at a fairly limited scope of increasing the availability of customer parking in downtown while utilizing the existing staffing model, which is enforcement within our police department. It's Monday through Friday enforcement. Maintaining free parking in the publicly owned and or operating spaces. And we think there's about 1,300 spaces that are currently either on street as well as in our 2 city-owned garages, and also in accordance with current state of Tennessee law. And we were looking at what types of recommendations, after we did our review, could increase that availability in a short term. What kind of recommendations could we bring to you that would improve parking accessibility on a short term within these parameters? And then finally, as I said, we expanded our group to include streets and engineering. They have also been, of course, studying parking, especially long-term with the Volker study, as well as studying actual streets in downtown for parking, where it's currently allowed, how long it's allowed, and Paul's going to speak to that in just a moment. Our group focused on 4 areas, 4 primary areas. And we did a study before we ever looked into recommendations, but we looked at what our current city ordinances are. We also evaluated what's our recent practice to see if there were differences between the ordinances and the recent practice. And then we also looked in our 4 areas that we identified were parking warnings. We looked at citation fees. We looked at the area of calendar year restarts. And I'll explain a little bit more about that one in just a moment. And then finally, the area of on-street parking limitations. To start with the category of warnings, that part of our city ordinance was enacted in 1976. That part of the ordinance, a little complicated. It may be issued when the driver is not a Williamson County resident and neither the driver nor the owner has a prior citation. While the ordinance that was from 1976 is effect, our recent practice has been 2 written warnings per car owner, regardless of the driver residence. For the category of citation fee, you can see that our current city ordinance from 2004 is an escalating structure, $10 for a first offense, up to $50 for the 3rd and successive offenses, as well as $50 for handicap violations. And this would be a good place to give a little background that Tennessee state law does limit us to $50 for a total violation. And a law department has advised that in Tennessee that we certainly are, the law requires that any fee over or violation fee over $50 requires access to a jury trial. And that is something that our city court does not have a jury trial. You stand before Judge Hood if you wish to question a fine. So
wish for a jury. Love you, Dina.
So in her court, $50 is the maximum that may be assessed, and so we are making recommendations based on current state law. The recent practice has been somewhat different also than our city ordinance. It has actually not been a escalating scale. It's been a scale that has differentiated between overtime parking and illegal parking. And I think this may be a point to let Lieutenant Prather just give a little background on what's considered illegal parking versus overtime.
Parking
right. Or you parked in an area that's not designated as parking, or you've got the wrong side of the car towards the curb, or you're further than 18 inches away from the curb. Fire lanes, handicaps, that type of stuff is illegal. And then we have the overtime, which is something different, where you stay beyond what the currently is 4 hours. If you stay beyond the 4 hours, then you get a citation.
Thank you. So The current recent practice is differentiated in the fines between those two types of violations. The next category, calendar year restarts. This is the category. This actually is one area in which our recent practice and the current city ordinance are in line. In 2004, the ordinance was updated that prior offenses were essentially wiped clean at the end of the calendar year. And there was a restart in January. So, for instance, if you were someone who had 15 violations in calendar year 2017, at the start of 18, and if you're someone who is going to have another 15 offenses this year, your warnings, 2 warnings would start over at the start of the calendar year. So that's how the calendar year restart. There's not a differentiation between maybe someone who just had one violation 10 years ago as a tourist or as a brand new employee and hasn't had a violation since, and then someone who has had numerous violations within a 12-month period, with the way the current ordinance is written. And before we get into the on-street parking, I'll ask if you have any questions about the first 3 categories that we looked at, and we may.
I just, why did we jump up from $10 first offense to 20?
That's because they've got the pay lots now, and they want to make sure that the fine is greater than what the pay lot is gonna be. Because if, otherwise you just park and you would pay a fine, but it'd be less than if you had to pay to park.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. I just didn't know inflation.
And we really haven't gone through the proposals. We've kind of just described them, so you may want to walk through that.
Well, we would maybe just now, if there's not any questions about our recent practice or ordinance in those categories, our proposals from our working group regarding the warnings is we do propose, and we are looking for your direction at this point to maintain the 2 warnings. We would like to have that cleaned up in the ordinance, and with the 76 ordinance, and to take out those provisions about Williamson County residents and non-Williamson County residents. We would also, our proposal, if we do want to keep the 2 warnings, is to actually write that procedure into the police department standard operating procedures.
So it would allow for a warning, but it would state it more generally as an officer discretion. But our standard practice would be what we've used over the last several years, which is the 2 warnings. It was a little challenging to write specific direction around a warning threshold in the ordinance. We'd rather have it be a little broader in terms of discretion, but then recognize that our standard operating procedure will be the two warnings, and the system will support us doing that.
And then for the citation fee recommendation, as Lieutenant Prather was giving background, we do recommend going back to the escalating structure of a first offense that's less than what third and successive offenses would be. For the $20 was simply chosen because the pay lots are around $14, $15 a day, and we would make that where it was a little bit more expensive, but certainly this is to encourage people to follow the parking rules that are in place, not to do anything other than that. And then, of course, maintain in accordance with state law that there is the $50 limit that we can place on fines. We also do recommend a change to the calendar year restart, to rather than it be a calendar year restart for everyone, change it to a rolling 12-month period.
What does that mean?
It would essentially mean that we would look if there was a violation, that the enforcement officer would look in the system. If that person has had violations within the last 12 months, it's not based on calendar years, just the last 12 months. If you had a warning or a violation 5 years ago, you would be eligible for a warning again. But if you, in the last 12 months, have had 15 violations, you would now have another violation. You would not be eligible for a warning simply because it's January 1st. So the rolling would be 12-month period back from whatever day you're currently on a violation. So if you're a driver who's a chronic offender, there's not going to be a forgiveness simply because of the start of a year. But if you've got someone who was a brand new employee 10 years ago in downtown, made a mistake, and then makes an honest mistake 10 years later, that
Or a year, or
Or-
12 months
or,
later.
or
6 months
13
later,
or 6
12
months.
months.
But it does give grace, but it doesn't give grace for chronic offenders who just use the calendar year restart as a way to have 2 free parking warnings. With that,
We're going to talk about on-street
we want,
parking time limits too? Let's-
So we're going.
The last category, let's talk through that as
And
well.
if I'll just give a little background and turn this over to my colleagues for the on-street parking. The history is that the current ordinance from 2008 is a 4-hour on-street parking limit with certain discretion assigned to the city administrator. Currently, there are some 15-minute and 30-minute spaces as assigned, for example, around the post office. There are some short-term spaces. And then also enforcement is Monday through Friday, with enforcement being handled by our police department. And with that,
Let me jump in on that a little bit. One of the things we saw in the study was a typical on-street parker was spending about an hour and a half. So we'd like that, and it seems to make sense from a customer standpoint to have those on-street parking spaces turning over on a more regular basis than what a 4-hour limit provides. Plus, it is more in line with what a customer typically uses for those on-street spaces. So that's one of the things that came out of the study, seems to reflect what most of our customers are using. You tend to get into now a blend with the 4 hours of some people using it for employee parking. And we'd probably be better suited if those were in surface lots or in the parking garage. So that's one of the things to look at. We would want it to be in a defined commercial core area, not that you're really getting to the customer type of parking. So that's one of the things we want your feedback on. And one of the things we'd also like feedback on is that enforcement model now is a Monday through Friday. You know, the sense is weekends are a little different, Sunday in particular, because it's a shorter commercial day. You've got, you don't have near the employee parking burden that you do, obviously Monday through Friday, but even on Saturday. And so Sunday, there seems to be a consensus that you don't want to go into enforcement on Sunday. Let Sunday be an open day. The question is more around, is it merit some enforcement on Saturdays? It is a heavier commercial day, a longer commercial day in terms of activity. There are fewer employment, worker parking. There's fewer of those parkers, but there are still some. So we'd like a little direction on what you think there, or that's something we can keep kind of thinking about. If you'd like to give us some feedback there, that's great. But that's one of the other elements we want to get a little more feedback on. Paul, I don't know if there's.
I'd say the hours of enforcement too, whether that's 7 to 5 or 7 to 7. Thinking about those hours and when you enforce. If you were to park there at 3:30, should you have to turn over before, or should that go to 7 in the morning till 7 p.m. So if you park there at 5:01, you're technically okay. So the hours is something we would probably need some feedback on too.
Got Alderman Blanton and then Alderman Martin.
Well, that was one of my questions, what's the enforcement hours? And then when you talk about the discretion of the city administrator, which is fine, when the post office, when that was probably decided, had a lot more action than it may today. The other thing is too, is that 15 minutes after 5 o'clock or when the post office closes, to me is a waste, because there's more people using that parking to go to the theater than they are to go to the post office or the bank, which I know the bank's a private lot. I would say that more people use the post office, because in the old days, for those who've been here, that was designated where you would drive up, drop it in the blue box, and keep going. I mean, there was a literal, whatever you want to call it. So, I mean, it's changed so much as far as who uses the post office, and those people access the post office, I would suggest, 8 out of 10 times from the back of the building. So I think those are prime parking places we probably need to look at a little bit closer. That would be my suggestion on that. And I think the 2-hour limit is great, because an hour was way too low.
But one thing that is in there, just to clarify, we're really proposing that we would bring to you a resolution that designates how we're going to break out those time limits so that you all can bless that. If you want to keep that in the city administrator's authority, we can do that, but we thought we'd want to bring
want that.
specifically at least an overview to you
don't
about
want
how,
anything to do
how
with
we'd
that.
lay the parking out and the time limits out and get your approval by resolution.
Yeah, the ordinance would really be as signed is how it's enforced, and so then as we bring forward plans that you can review and approve and we can get public feedback on, you know, that would really be the enforcement mechanism as you approve it and as it's actually signed on the street. And so you could put certain hours that time limit applies, for example, the 15-minute
Wouldn't the
mark.
signage need to reflect that as well, though?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll need to update signage, and that's another part of our work is looking at, once we get the direction and a strategy on how we want to handle any changes around parking, we're going to look at a more complete update of signage around downtown for parking, but also wayfinding and those elements. I would add also, we expect in April to have the signage up in the parking garages about available spaces. So you'll come up to the parking garage and you will see if it's full or not, and as you enter the parking garage, you'll be able to see there are X number of spots on each level, how many are available, because we're able to combine both our security cameras and some software to help monitor that and get those counts out. And we've got the signage blessed by historic zoning, and we're working on the last pieces. But again, we think by April, by Main Street Festival, those signs will be up and operational in both 2nd and 4th Avenue.
One more question to clarify. We're talking now about free parking.
Yes, we are.
So at this point, we're not pulling the trigger on any type of paid parking on Main Street.
That is a much longer term discussion. At this point, we're saying, yeah, continue to be free. We're looking at more tailored time limits, differentiating on street a little more, and see how that helps, if that helps with the customer turnover.
So I've got Alderman Martin, followed by Alderman Peterson, followed by Alderman McClendon, followed by Alderman Berger. And remind you that we're gonna be out of here 6:45, so move on.
This 4-hour limit was placed, we were trying to get people to come to town. And that was supposed to be an incentive. We couldn't, you know, we wanted people to come to town to shop. There was not that much down there, so we wanted to do that. Now, everybody wants to come to town. People can't even go to lunch downtown because there's no place to park. And what is happening is, no matter what time you come to town in the mornings, all the parking places are full because the people who work downtown fill up the parking spaces. And, you know, you see them and they stay all day. They may move their car a little bit when we had the chalk thing, but I don't think we're gonna do that anymore, are we?
We're gonna have to do it currently, but we are eventually talking about virtually numbering all of the spaces. There won't be any marking on the pavement, but it'll be done virtually. And so what the parking enforcement officer will do, they'll have a tablet, they'll go in, record the spot, what the driver's, the license plate is, and then they'll come back 2 hours later, and it doesn't matter where they moved up 6 inches or back 6 inches so the chalk doesn't line up. They're still in that same spot.
Okay, on the map that you showed.
Oh, yeah, we need to bring that.
Haven't gotten there yet. But
Oh, is
on
it?
the
Okay.
map,
Yeah, the next.
you've got 4th Avenue in green. So that may, and a few places on 3rd in green. So that is total residential.
Yeah, if I could,
Yeah, that's our first cut at differentiating the time limits.
yeah, if I could just give an overview, this was just a first cut at doing it, and what we basically did was say, okay, where's your commercial businesses, and that's 2-hour parking, and where's your residential parking, and that's free, and what the blue represents is, it's really not suitable for parking, but it can handle the parking because it's just wide lanes, there's no sidewalks.
Yeah.
We wouldn't stripe it, it would just be kind of like a through street where we allow parking. And it was really just for discussion's sake. We're still working with a parking committee to vet this and figure out where it makes sense and where it doesn't. And there's a lot of different stakeholders on that, and ultimately we'll have to come to have more public involvement and bring that back to y'all for recommendation.
Well, there's
but-
a lot that needs to be said about that, and I'm talking mostly about south, because north, I think it's more commercial. North, 3rd and 4th, but the south, it's not, it's residential. And people are parking, because of the paid parking lot, I guess, behind the Methodist church, the Generations Church. People are parking on in those places from early in the morning till late in the afternoon. And they're parking in front of the fire plugs. They're parking in the driveways. I've got pictures on my phone. I take pictures every day of the cars there and their license plates. So if you want them, I've got them. But, you know, they need to be striped. And I know you don't want to do that, but I think that really would help people understand that if there are lines there, you don't park in front of a fire plug. They don't understand that now. I don't understand why they don't understand it, but they don't. So, anyway, that needs a lot of work, Paul.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
Yep.
Okay, I've got Alderman Peterson.
Well, the first thing is, what happens on the days whenever we have a budget committee meeting that lasts 3 hours? There's going to need to be more places for aldermen. I mean, because I'm just saying, you know we're going to have at least 3 hours. We've already had one that was 3 hours long. And so we've got to work with that somewhat.
Can we get a parking sticker?
Hey, I got us one spot. Years ago.
Garage can be, there can be spaces in the
I got us
garage.
one.
Yeah.
But because
it?
that is
That's a tough
important.
one.
Yeah, it really is. The other thing is a specific place whenever you're looking at these, and I think it's Cummings because I had somebody talking to me about it again today. Sort of where you're behind the, I guess the bank there or something. It's really hard to see and to get in and out of that.
Oh, you're talking about the Methodist Church and First Bank?
So what,
I guess so. You know, it's really, really difficult, and it shows parking on one side, but that's the side that's on is the place where you really can't see.
Where the blue line is.
Yes, I think that's right. That's
so
right.
what we've done with to develop this exhibit is we went through and actually put a pavement marking plan together. We looked at every sight distance issue at every intersection, and it eliminated some parking spots in areas where there was an adequate sight distance. But we took a comprehensive look at it so that we would have something to take to the stakeholders as we start to try
We'll
to
go
vet.
back and look at that one because this person has spoken to me over many, many, many months, and he said something to me again today, and I said, well, guess what? We're going to be talking about parking. But apparently, the line of sight is not good there.
No, it's not.
At all.
Behind First Bank and the post office, and there's that little corner there, that little short street.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes, and if they're trying to come in and out of there, it's
It's where the
very-
little blue line is. It's
Yeah.
like the
Yeah,
pipe
we
piece there.
definitely made some changes there in the proposed plan, which we're not 100% done with.
Okay.
Okay, then I've got Alderman McClendon next, followed by Alderman Bransford.
Okay, sometimes I come to these meetings and I feel like I'm the 10th man. You know what that is? It's the person who is designated to disagree when there is unanimous agreement elsewhere. I don't think you ought to do the take 4 to 2, because all that you will do is you will force people out into the street to drive around to look for a replacement parking lot, parking space, when they have been summoned to the courthouse involuntarily, or when they have other business. I mean, if we knew that we were just trying to turn shoppers over, okay. But the reality is that many days of the week, you've got 100 people sitting in General Sessions Court that came here in, I don't know, 80 cars or something, and they're there starting at 8:30, and they're there till after lunch most of the time. And if you force all those people to go turn their car over, you're just going to put people out driving around looking for a different spot, and that's not solving anything. That's not creating parking, that's creating traffic. So I'm not sure I would advocate for shortening up the 4 to 2. I don't think that really gets you the result that you want. I think our first offense fee ought to be at least what it would have paid you to park for, at a paid parking lot. Otherwise, we've created a perverse incentive. Cheat the system and come out cheaper. To that end, I try to purge myself of things that really chap me. They're not helpful. But one that does is illegal parking. if you park in a handicap spot illegally, or in front of a fire hydrant, or whatever, you ought to get the $50 fine off the top. That's just being a difficult person. And I have no sympathy for that. I don't want a warning. I don't want any of that. If they park illegally, just hit them with the $50 fine. That's just being rude or stupid. And either one of those things should be painful. So, now I'm not so sure I'd be willing to hit somebody with a $50 fine for backing into the parking lot, because I don't need the phone calls than that. But for outright, for things that are just obvious in any city that you can't park that way, like our garage parking where we prohibit people from backing in, is kind of a unique thing that we do. It's not that it's never done anywhere else, but that's not something that I think people drive into Franklin and realize will be a rule, right? That's kind of something that's not quite unique, but it's something we do that's not necessarily.
It's an easy mistake to
Yeah,
make.
it's an easy mistake to make without meaning to make it. But for other straight up illegal fireplaces, fire hydrants, and handicap and blocking driveways and that kind of thing, hit them. I have no sympathy for that. But I think the 4 hours, I get why we would conceptually try to turn parking over, but not if they're not actually going to leave. So not if they don't have the choice to leave. That's where I'm at on some of these things.
Alderman Bransford.
7th Avenue, we've talked about customers and the employees, but there are residents and citizens along that, I think it's the blue line, which means they can park on the side, and I've had a couple calls there. It's one of those structures is a duplex, and I think one driveway for the duplex and the other side doesn't have a drive, so they're on the street. And I think I don't know what we need to do other than sometime this person cannot park in front of where they live. And I don't know how we need to address that, or is it some type of special striping or whatever. And I'm not sure how frequent that happens throughout our downtown area, but that there is a duplex there along that 7th Avenue stretch. Just to be mindful of that. And it's worse when, of course, there's an event downtown, so.
That would not be, the map provides, it would not be time limited on 7th.
But it'd just be first come, first
Yeah,
served.
it would be. It's public parking.
Yeah, I don't want him to be the 10th man. He makes really good sense with that point, because when you consider the courthouse.
Well, there's parking garage there.
Well, and that
does fill up. Now,
it does. It's
I would
full.
take exception with Ms. Martin's blanket statement that there's no parking ever downtown after 7 in the morning.
No, I don't mean that. I said they're just down
on Main Street.
On 4th Avenue, they don't.
Oh, well, okay. But I'm able to find parking when I need to go to the.
We've got 640 parking places in structure. I think we want to have those folks park there.
And they do.
Yeah.
But when they run out of parking there, for people who are going to breakfast at Merity's or Puckett's, or working across the street on Main Street.
But the breakfast
somewhere,
people should be able to park on the street and get in that 2 hours.
There's not enough spots to do that.
Plus they sit in red carpet.
So they relate to each other, though. The on-street, you encourage the people that are going to turn over within that 2 hours to be on street, and the folks that are going to be there longer use one of the 640 places that between 2nd Avenue and 4th Avenue garages.
Yes, you can encourage that. My point is, on-street parking to go have breakfast is less than courthouse parking in the structure. So those would be more dedicated to that, but it's a mixture. It's a mixed-use parking garage.
Do we have a real handle on how many of those spots, people are creatures of habit. Right? Given the chance, they'll park in the same place every time.
Right.
Do we have a real understanding of how many courthouse or other downtown workers are in the structure over there? Because the one here might as well be on the moon for some people. I don't get it, but that's the way people are. But the one by the courthouse, my impression is largely parked by people who are there all day, Monday through Friday. And if that's true, then we're not really doing much by forcing people to move every 2 hours if the majority of the structure is just people who show up to work at 7, 7:30, 8 o'clock and stay there all day.
They need to go home after 2 hours. They don't
See,
Just say something very
I'll-
I mean, there are a lot of
Let me,
employee parking. We've studied that. That is what the parking garage that fills up the most frequently. So we know those elements. I don't know that we know exactly the breakdown of employee
I just hate
versus
to see us
shopper
pass
or
something,
restaurant.
Get the signs printed.
Yeah.
And like Dana says, create a bigger problem than what we already
and,
have.
And Mr. Stuckey, you don't want anything to do with this being discretion on your desk.
Yeah.
Because when the phone rings and someone says, "What idiot made that the rule?" you are going to have two choices, two explanations. One of them is you,
That was
and
me,
the other
yeah.
is us. So I'll take that off you right now.
So we
Just
need
have
to go
one
ahead and wrap this up. This is
One comment.
nothing. I mean, it's a good discussion going, but we've got a lot to do. I've got Alderman Berger, then I'll recognize you, Alderman Peterson.
Okay, real quick.
I'm going to hold you to it.
A lot of good things here, but I see that there's two things that need to take place to help relieve these issues. Number one, we need a courthouse parking decal, so that when people go into the courthouse or when they go into the garage or wherever it is, they need to have some kind of paper they put on the dash that says they're in court. So we're not finding them and we're not chasing them out of the garage, or we're not chasing them out of their parking spaces. They have to be there. They usually, Dana's right, they go in, either they're there for 3, 4, 5 hours sometimes, and we've got to be able to identify them. They have to be given a special piece of paper that goes on their dash and sits in that car. Whether they have to go into the courthouse and get that and take it back to their car, I don't care. As long as we're able to make that happen, that has to be studied. We have to do that. Second thing is, we have got to get off-site parking for these employees and get them out of downtown, get them off Main Street and 1st, 2nd, 3rd Avenue, 4th Avenue. Got to get them up at Bicentennial Park. We need a shuttle that brings them down. I don't care what we have to do. We're talking about that. We've got to make that happen because we've got to get the employees and we have to get the court employees out of the garage. Because we need the garage for the people visiting the court. We need the garage for the people going to our restaurants, shopping in our stores, the visitors, the residents who are bringing business downtown. Two things I see have to happen in order for us to address this in a very responsible manner. And those two things, I think, have to be paramount. And I totally agree with Dana. Give them the $50 or more fine for handicap, fire hydrant, fire lanes, blocking driveways, those things. Backing in, I think the first time they back in wrong, they get a warning. They don't get a ticket. They back in wrong, they get a warning.
And that's what
Yeah.
happens now.
Second, don't change
Now.
that.
Now.
No, I
Mhm.
don't want
Need
to
to
change
warn.
that at all. And then the second time, fine them whatever the fine is. That's all my comments.
I'm not going to let you define brevity as Alderman Peterson, Alderman Berger did, Alderman Peterson.
No. If someone who is doing, here at the time, whenever they built the 4th Avenue parking garage, I believe there was an arrangement with the county.
For a year.
Was it only for 1 year?
It expired.
Okay, well, I'd just like to look at that because I understand that they.
However long it was, it expired.
Okay, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
For the people who
It's
work
gone.
there, is what I understood it
Yeah,
for.
they need to be parking elsewhere.
Okay, you got some direction?
Not exactly. We
But-
really don't.
but,
We'll be
would,
coming back.
I do recall that the parking consultant,
Excuse me.
I'm sorry,
I was short.
I'm sorry.
You.
I wanted to
We'll be back in
remind
front
you
of you.
that the parking consultant recommended the 4 hours go to 2 hours, if I remember correctly. So keep that in mind as you make your decisions, so.
Yep.
Next is event permit for Freedom Middle, then followed by event permit for Willpower 5K, and then liquor license for Magnum Wines. Any comments or questions on those? Seeing none, we'll move on to 6, which is a discussion of a possible ordinance restricting the retail sale of dogs and cats. Alderman Berger, you brought this?
Yes, I did. Is Ashley here? Ashley, can you come up, sit down? Yes, we've had some contact with this over the years, actually quite a few years. And Ashley got a hold of me. This is Ashley Cunningham. I'll let you all introduce yourselves in a minute. But I would like to turn this over to them and let Ashley tell you about why we're actually bringing this to the board and what the need is. And it's actually something I learned. It's not so much, even so much only the health issue of animals and people's investment in animals, but it has also become a critical health issue for human beings. And so that was very much an eye-opener to me over the years, and it's become such an issue. So if you'll introduce yourselves, and then Ashley, go ahead.
Well, excuse me before you get started, Ashley, but we are time constrained, so like you to keep that in mind. We don't need a 30-minute presentation. We need some brevity to it, because this is something where we would decide whether we want to even explore whether we want an ordinance. So go ahead, and I may have to interrupt you and say we need to move on. So.
And let me just say too, back with the mayor on that, is that if we can give us the picture of the needs and things that we talked about, and then see how the board is feeling on that, and then come back to another work session where we could really get into the details more.
Okay. Well, I do have some handouts here for you.
Okay.
Can I pass these?
Just pass them.
Okay, sure. If you could pass them around.
Yeah, sure.
And don't be intimidated by that. I'm not going to go through every page on it, and I've taken the liberty of highlighting the most pertinent portions for you all. So my name is Ashley Cunningham. I am a local animal protection advocate. I live here in Franklin. And I want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak with you tonight. This is Nancy Tarver, and she is a local consumer who bought 2 puppies from the local pet store. She'll talk to you about her experience in a few minutes. So we really have 3 main concerns that surround issues related to pet stores. We have an animal welfare concern, we have a consumer protection concern, and we have a public health concern. So I'm just gonna give a little bit of an overview on what a puppy mill is. A puppy mill is basically a very large-scale commercial dog breeding operation where very little time and attention is paid to the welfare of the dogs. There's very little oversight, regulation, and what there is generally not enforced very well. I have numbered all the pages here down at the bottom right-hand corner, and if you'll go to page 2, this is a document from the U.S. Department of Agriculture where I've highlighted, even they say they are the ones with the authority to enforce what lax standards there are, but they say, these are not ideal. They're minimum standards to basically keep the dogs alive. And that they encourage people to, exceed those standards. What to me on page 3 and 4, the most egregious lack of regulation comes from the confinement. So under USDA regulations, it is perfectly legal to keep a dog for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year in a cage only 6 inches longer, wider, and taller than its body. They're usually let out to breed, and that's about it. That's perfectly legal under the USDA. As you can see on page 4, there's just kind of a visual representation of that. Moving into the consumer protection issue, I want to talk a little bit about the local store. Page 5 and 6 provide statements that they give about their store and the breeders they use. Page 5 is from their website, their store's website. Only the most responsible puppies will be showcased in their store. They say we never use breeders with substandard kennel conditions and require our...
Interrupt you right now,
okay.
And I apologize, but I'd rather not get into talking about particular stores.
Okay.
I'd like for you to tell us why we need to consider having an ordinance in our city,
Okay.
Period.
Okay.
I don't want to hear anything about stores in our city episodes that occurred at one of the pet stores. You tell us why we need the ordinance, and then the board can have that kind of information. But I don't really think it's appropriate that we start delving into our local businesses at this point.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to, be able to provide you all with the evidence that I have to show why this is an.
As I said,
I understand.
tell me why we need the ordinance, not something about one of our businesses in our town.
Okay.
And I'm not defending them one way or the other. I don't know.
I understand. And I'm trying to keep it brief. I just want to show that, virtually all pet stores are getting their dogs from the mills because that is the only way to provide a consistent supply chain to the stores for the dogs that they sell. And that is the case that I have seen, there are over 250. They're just, the 250th local ordinance was just passed in the United States. This is a widespread problem. Franklin is no exception. If you want me to skip past the pertinent information I have about what's going on locally, I will, and I'll take you to page 27 and talk a little bit about the public health problem. And the CDC, starting last year, started an investigation on a Campylobacter outbreak that has been spread now across 17 states. There have been 113 cases as of January 30th of this year. And there is the pet store chain that has caused this outbreak is Petland. They are a multi-state chain. And the CDC found that an outbreak of multi-drug resistant, that's antibiotic resistant, Campylobacter was created from being spread out of their stores, out of their retail stores, and that there have been 113 cases as of January 30th, including 2 that originated out of the Knoxville Petland. That is the only Petland in Tennessee. They have indicated that they do want to move into Middle Tennessee. We don't know where.
And Ashley, you're talking 113 cases of people.
Yes. 113 individual.
Sure
yes.
Right. Okay.
113 individual cases. As of January 30th, I've attached on page 28 a little bit of information about the 2 people who were who did contract Campylobacter in Knoxville, and then page 29, actually, just on February 9th. A story was reported in Georgia from a 16-year-old who was an employee at that local Petland for a month, and she was rushed to the hospital with a fever of nearly 105 and hospitalized for 4 days after she contracted Campylobacter at that location in Georgia. And, one last thing I'll say about this is very popular, very wanted, in addition to being badly needed in Franklin. I stood in front of the 5 Point Starbucks in downtown Franklin and collected approximately 1,400 signatures from people in Williamson County that want to see this happen. There are about 900 more signatures on my online petition at change.org. People here love their dogs. They care about dogs in general, and I think they would like to see this happen.
I'd like to say 2 more things.
Sure.
Thank you for getting the local people in the petition, because that's really important that we hear from our people that live here, not people in other states. And also, this does not stop people from purchasing dogs from breeders. I just want to make
Correct.
that perfectly clear, that there is a very important distinction. What I'd ask from this meeting today is that we all take this material home and that we read it, and that Ashley, that you're available to answer questions, and then maybe come back at the board's pleasure to talk to you to get some more information when we possibly have more time to ask you the questions after they peruse the material.
Sure.
And if there any other things.
Can I say one thing about the breeders? I have a dog from a very responsible breeder in Alabama at home who put me through the ringer. This is absolutely has nothing to do with responsible breeders. In fact, responsible breeders can be some of our best allies. And with these kind of ordinances and with this kind of legislation, responsible breeders do not sell their dogs through pet stores. They want to know where their dogs are going to end up. They provide you with a long warranty. They say, you know, if something doesn't work out, bring the dog back to me. Don't surrender the dog to an animal shelter. You know, so this is absolutely not an issue with all breeders. It's just the
And I will say one last thing, that there are some pet stores in our town that do not sell pets at all, and they work with our shelters. And
Right.
Emily McGinn is shaking her head up there because you know very well that they're working with our animal shelter here to have adopt a pet day, and they are responsible in that manner of bringing the dogs in from our shelters and to find them homes. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Alderman
Yes,
Bransford.
Yes.
Ashton, thank you. And Ashton and I have met and talked on a couple of occasions.
Yes.
You've shared this with me. Also, I'm interested in why isn't and we talked a little bit about this, where is there self-regulation within the pet store, does the pet store, is there some self-regulations, or are there some violations that they are doing and somebody can hold them accountable? Why do we have to, and I mean, there should be legal things that a pet store can do or a buyer can do. Why do we have to?
Right. What does the responsibility fall on?
Yeah.
So I agree with you. Unfortunately, there are no state regulations on dog breeders at all in Tennessee right now. The existing Commercial Breeder Act was allowed to sunset by our state legislature in 2014, and we have not been able to get those regulations re-implemented. And the USDA is actually talking right now about allowing breeder clubs like the AKC to inspect the mills, and the USDA wouldn't even be involved anymore on implementing the very lax regulation that we currently have. So it's a problem pretty much from
loose
A to Z.
regulations from the state or federal.
There are no state regulations on commercial dog breeders right now in Tennessee. If there was, you know, an issue that was raised by a consumer, it would have to fall under something like a cruelty statute.
Okay, thank you for
And our
coming.
state and our state allows the municipalities to enact their own legislation or their own ordinances on this.
Thank you.
Are you wanting to leave that petition?
Well, these are my originals. I'm happy to make copies.
Well, you'll need to give us a copy
Of
since you
course.
mentioned it for our records.
Sure.
Make a copy and
Any other
get it back to
comments?
City Hall.
One comment.
Okay, great.
Alderman Speedy, and then I'll recognize Alderman Barnes.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Sure, and first I'll say I'm a dog owner and obviously not for puppy mills, but my one question on the ordinance would be is what if a store did want to sell puppies through, they identified it as a responsible breeder? Would this ordinance allow that to happen?
They would need to work with either a reputable rescue or a shelter.
So if there
Responsible
wasn't-
breeders won't let their dogs be sold through pet stores. Generally, most breeder clubs have a code of ethics that actually ban that.
So I guess my other comment would be, I could see some unintended consequences from this. I mean, at least we have a local business that maybe if there was a bad puppy bought, there's, you know, a business license, they're paying taxes, we can go after them versus we push this to a Craigslist or a classified ads. It just seems like there could be some unintended consequences. And I could see it, I guess I'd be fearful of passing an ordinance that would shut down an existing business, I guess, in our town.
Well,
My question is along the same lines. I think you need to look at the implications of this, what this means to the businesses. Where else in Tennessee is this being done, this particular ordinance, if this is being done someplace
Well,
else?
and quite frankly, the reason we're giving this to you is is there enough interest for us to go spend significant staff time in researching and figuring out what this might look like, how and who would enforce it, and what the experience is. 250 cities across the country.
Yes.
That's a decent number to start with, but I don't know, we would have to look at that a little more.
Any in Tennessee?
I don't know. I haven't.
there are no in Tennessee.
Okay.
No
This would be the
Tennessee
first.
city has this ordinance.
No, but it's very widespread across the country. Actually, the first two have just recently passed in Iowa. I mean, the most, I believe, are in Florida, but, all over the Michigan, Pennsylvania, all over Ohio, all over the country.
Excuse me, Brandy.
You're fine.
Alderman Bland.
First of all, I will say that we are very fortunate to have a no-kill shelter in our community. And which is typically teeming with, I know, cats, and has a abundance of dogs as well as other rescues in the area. I have heard nightmare stories about, you know, this particular business in our community. I think we have to be really careful. It would seem it'd be a Department of Health situation. I don't know how we as a city, if it's our purview, but I think we need to look and see, because there's other opportunities for our citizens to be able to have a different experience. And so I would say let's kind of walk this through and see what our options are to protect our citizens.
Alderman McClendon.
I'd be interested to know what the fiscal impact upon the city would be. How are we going to, what's it going to cost to enforce an ordinance like this? Who's going to do it? What are we going to do? Send police officers out and haul people in on tickets to court? If so, I mean, I get it, but there's a cost to that.
So just look into it.
Refresh my memory, I think the county handles all of our animal services now.
They do the animal control
we-
piece, yeah, we contract them for animal control
Yeah,
services.
how do other communities handle that?
Okay, well, we
How would-
appreciate
how-
you.
How would other communities handle that, is another question that Alderman McClendon is asking. You know, the financial implications of enforcement. It's a very real question.
Sure, and I would contend that it would be virtually zero. I mean, fortunately, we're not having pet stores pop up on every corner. So, you know, if there was a complaint, it could go through the City of Franklin Police, or they could contact, you know, codes enforcement directly. They would go out, and if they are found to be in violation of the ordinance, you know, a citation, I assume, would be written, and then they would either pay the citation or fight it in court. I don't see a huge fiscal impact.
So is there enough interest to move forward with some research on the part of the staff?
Are there any state bills that are going through the legislature? It seemed like there were some last year that were going through the,
Shauna's shaking her head, yes.
I mean, I would,
You have that one?
Yes.
You have that one that you're working on?
I think you all had one going through the state, right? Did you, when we talked?
So they are looking to expand the Cat, Dog, and Dealer Act of the state, which would, you know, expand regulations on dog breeders on the state level. It's just been assigned to committee, so whether it will actually make it through is a question mark.
We did along the way ask our legislators, and their read was that there wasn't much on the, there's some things in the hopper, but there's not much on the radar screen in terms of, I don't think they felt optimistic that anything was gonna happen
On a state
this
level.
session at the state
Yeah.
level, and that's not a position, it's just what
Right.
they've heard.
Yeah.
I got Alderman Barnhill,
Well,
then Alderman
the only
McClendon.
thing I'd say is I don't want to see us duplicating something that if it's that important, that it needs to be done at the state level, therefore it covers all 95 counties and all the municipalities, rather than one local ordinance here that impacts a pet store inside the city limits of Franklin, but does not impact a pet store outside. So it just has nothing to do with somebody in Brentwood, Spring Hill, Thompson Station, or wherever they are. It only affects that pet store in Franklin. And so I think we need to be cautious about that. I'm certainly not in objection to the puppy mill not having those. I've seen some pictures and some other things on it. But I think we need to make sure that we've got that the ordinance does not duplicate what could be going through the state and the financial implications that we're looking at.
Alderman McClendon.
Never mind.
Okay, I do have a letter from the Humane Society of the United States sent to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. I'll put that in,
Yep.
into the record.
So,
If everybody didn't get it, I'll make sure we pass it along, and staff will at least come back with some advice as far as what's out there right now based on that and some potential financial implications. And we'll talk about it again.
Thank you.
As an advocate, are you advertising and marketing what should not be happening? As an advocate of this anti-puppy mill, are you as an organization or an advocate, are you doing that?
Well, yes, I mean, I've been working on this issue for approximately 4 years since I became an advocate, and I just, you know, I try to raise as much awareness as possible.
So maybe continue that, I mean, because it sounds like there may be some issues out there, but not, I don't see a major problem right now, but there could be.
Well, Thanks for bringing it, and thanks for the brevity and understanding the time constraint we have tonight.
Right, we're gonna look into it more. So we'll do that.
Okay,
Thank you.
next
Thank you
is
all.
consideration of rejection of the bids of the water reclamation facility.
This item is on both agendas. I would just, we've put a lot of review into bids received in January for the wastewater treatment plant expansion and upgrade or water reclamation facility, and believe that we would be best served to go ahead and update those specifications from some of the feedback we've gotten from bidders and from the engineers, and looking at it, that presents the best opportunity for us to get the best value that the market has to offer. There are particular issues around a couple subcontracting areas, electrical and the building systems, the HVAC, where there seem to be a pretty limited amount of competition among subs. And so some of our upgrades not only, or updates to the specifications not only may simplify those and help with savings, but we are hopeful that they may open up some other options in terms of subs for those contractors. So what we're recommending is that we would go ahead and reject those bids tonight. We are already starting the process to be able to put updated specifications out, and that we would accept those bids later in the year and have those to the board by the end of June, so that you could make an award at your first meeting in July. So we'd have it at the last work session in June and for a vote and approval at the first meeting in July. That way we can keep on track to get that project started by September. So we are disappointed in the delay, but feel that there's enough value to be had by rebidding and updating specifications that it's well worth it, and that our ability to try to go back and value engineer would get us pennies on the dollar in terms of the savings that we see potentially available to us compared to the bids we received.
Okay, any questions? Item number 8, draft professional services agreement with Jackson Thornton. We've asked to defer that one to February 27th, 2018. Number 9 is the procurement award to Landscape Services of Nashville, Tennessee, in the amount of $247,140 for a year per year for a term of award for moving and related contract services for certain parks and certain other city-owned properties. This is a mowing contract, and we decided it's easier to outsource this rather than have part-time work doing it. So
yeah, we basically can't find the seasonal work, and part of why we've deferred this the last couple meetings is we actually put postings out there with updated salaries, more competitive salaries, to see if we would do better. And quite frankly, we didn't do much better in terms of the number of applicants. It's just hard to find folks to do that work directly for us, so we're better off looking at a contracting arrangement.
Okay, item 10 and 11 we're going to take together. Was there a question? I'm sorry. Item 10 and 11 we're going to take together, which has to do with rezoning of specific development residential district for the property located on West Main. One is a development plan, and the other one is rezoning. We've seen this before.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's the Arlington PUD subdivision or development plan. It was previously approved to be rezoned to SDR 10 in August of 2016 for an 8-unit multi-family building at 725 West Main Street. The applicant wants to add 2 additional units. That will be done without altering the footprint or the exterior of the building. They're just rearranging the interior. And both the rezoning request and the development plan were recommended by staff and unanimously recommended by the Planning Commission.
Any questions? Ready to move on? We'll consider items 12 and 13 together, which have to do with an ordinance to rezone 19.11 acres from specific developmental variety district to another type of specific development. Josh, you write the best things. Would you explain this to us in
Sure.
10 words or less?
I'd be
Items
happy
12
to,
and
Mayor.
13?
This is a previously approved PUD development located on Franklin Road. They are removing they're asking to remove their residential entitlements and replace it with one single office building to the rear of the property.
Wait a minute, is this not, I thought this was the funeral home. Did
That's
that-
next
that one
month. This is the property next to where the funeral home is going to be,
Oh, the one, is the south of it,
north of it,
north of it?
north of the funeral home.
Okay,
towards Moore's Lane.
okay. So it's not instead of the funeral home?
It is not instead of the funeral home. That'll be before you next month.
Okay. So we're not moving on down with rezoning?
We are not. That's a firm line that's
Yes.
codified both in our ordinance and our lane, Envision Franklin,
Yes.
of where the commercial growth will stop.
Good, good, okay.
Okay, any questions about that? And thanks for making it so clear. Item 14 is a resolution approving a development plan for Ward's Mill PUD subdivision with one modification, development standards for the property located north of Boyd Mill Avenue and west of Downs Boulevard. Establish a public hearing. Are you going to do that one too, Josh?
I sure am, Mayor. The applicant's proposing 18 single-family lots off of Boyd Mill Avenue. Both Envision Franklin supports single-family detached residential lots that are compatible with the surrounding development. The building placement and lot width is also consistent with Envision Franklin, the zoning ordinance. The applicant's requesting one modification of standards, cul-de-sac longer than 500 feet. The applicant is proposing a cul-de-sac of 1,425 feet. Residential sprinklers will be installed throughout the development, and if and/or when the neighboring property is developed, the cul-de-sac length will be compliant with the 500-foot maximum length.
Any questions? Item number 15 is an ordinance to rezone 1.11 acres from neighborhood commercial district to office residential district for the properties located south of West Main and west of 11th Avenue South.
The property is currently zoned neighborhood commercial. The lots are being used as residences, which is a non-conforming use in neighborhood commercial. So they are wishing to rezone to office residential. This is supported by the Envision Franklin Land Use Plan, as it is in the office residential design concept. It was recommended favorably by staff and unanimously by the Planning Commission.
And it's funny to me because it's always been a house.
Yes, it has.
But it's like, wow,
They're
okay.
they're historic, so.
Right.
Alderman McClendon.
Not only does this comply with the Envision Franklin plan, which seems refreshing, it also complies with the McClendon doctrine, which is to zone things what they in fact are.
Didn't know you had a doctrine.
Alderman Martin.
I haven't broken that one out in a while.
Why, Joey, is that little spot, that little square behind the one next to 11th Avenue, why is that not included?
The individual property owners are coming in at 1101, 1107. They would like to do a lot line shift, and if they were to do the lot line shift, they would lose their non-conforming use status. So that's the main reason for wanting to come in and rezone to office residential. So it's just these two property owners.
Okay, any other questions about that one? I do need to back up just a second because there was something that Josh in his brevity, which I instructed him to do, needs to mention and add a few more words.
With the Ward's Mill PUD subdivision, the sanitary sewer that serves the development must be upsized. The
You're
agreement
asking
is
for
being drafted
reimbursement.
and will be brought before you at the March 13th meeting.
Yes, I had that down here, but I was.
Okay.
That's important.
Okay, let's talk about number 16, the draft road impact fee offset agreement with West Haven Partners LLC for intersection improvements at 96 West and West Haven Boulevard, Old Charlotte Pike.
So we're bringing this item back from our last work session and did a little more discussion with neighboring property owners and wanted to walk through those three
options in the light of what some of those discussions are and what those options might be for us going forward. And let Paul walk through that with you.
Okay, so again, there's 3 options, all of which include left turn lanes, which is the critical piece of having a efficient signal, is to have dedicated left turn lanes. And so the 3 different options are, option 1 or A is where we just install a signal on West Haven Boulevard, and we do not touch Old Charlotte, and we do not touch Highway 96 other than putting in the signal equipment. It is the least expensive. However, you will cut into the median. We have heard from many of the West Haven residents that they did not want us to cut into the median, so I'll be sure to point that out.
Wow.
Option number 2, or B, was basically the second you try to save that median to line up Old Charlotte with the through lane and get the dedicated left turn lanes, you start having to do significant widening on Old Charlotte. I'll say at the last meeting I said that wasn't in the city limits. It is in the city limits. I mistakenly said it. So 100% of this would be within city-owned right-of-way and property. That option has an open ditch to it on Old Charlotte or in a 4-foot shoulder. That does not meet city standards. If and when Old Charlotte is ever upgraded beyond this, we would essentially have to go back and re-dig up the lanes to put in the storm infrastructure associated with Old Charlotte, and so staff does not think that that is a wise investment, that going that route. It's around $780,000 the total estimated cost. The last option is to stick more with the city standard of installing curb and gutter on Old Charlotte Pike. It is option C. It's more expensive at $1.13 million. It does include curb and gutter. It's, again, the same as option B, but it has the curb and gutter. It is the most expensive option. So meeting with the property owners, we met with Mr. Short. His opinion was, as long as it didn't impact his farming operation, he was okay, and the curb and gutter seemed to be what would enhance value long-term and seemed to be the wisest investment, is pretty much what he said. Again, the West Haven residents didn't want to lose the median. The Gentrys, their response was they wanted as little impact as possible to their property. My response to that is that's option number 1 or A, the cheapest option. They also did say they're not against growth and understand that we need to grow and accommodate infrastructure. So if we were to look at option 2 or 3, the more expensive options, again, they wanted the least impactful. I cannot tell you today which one is going to be the least impactful until you do a full-blown survey and a design, at least a preliminary design. I can't tell you that because the second you start putting in storm infrastructure, that could impact other utilities that need to go widened out. And generally speaking, curb and gutter, open ditch usually has a bigger impact on property owners. But again, I can't tell you with confidence which one is going to be least impactful to them today. And so that's a summary of the opinions that we have. Jeremy's here with West Haven Partners, and he would like to speak about where they stand on this issue.
So, this initially started, option A was presented to us, and the median was removed. We did hear feedback from residents as well as Southern Land that that's not what we would prefer to see there. So Paul and team, they were willing to come up with the 2 other options B and C. While option C is the full build-out model, it's 3 times the cost of our initial plan scenario that we were looking at. And it requires a much longer period for the impact piece to be repaid back. Option A, the impact fees would be received within 9 months. Option C, it's closer to 3 years. And part of that has to do with the new category of the collector road impact fees that has been established, which West Haven has collected 0 to date. And that's a factor for us. If Southern Land had their way, we would choose option B, which is actually more expensive option for us, but provides the look that we would like to see at West Haven Boulevard. We would prefer to keep our trees that have been there for 10+ years. If we were forced to pick between options A and option C, due to 3 times the cost, we would have to say option A is the one we would support.
So you don't support C at all?
No, C, it's pretty expensive endeavor compared to what we were initially looking at.
Okay. Alderman Martin and Alderman Peterson.
All right. A does not, why don't you like A?
A removes the median.
A what?
It removes the median. So
portion.
the
Oh, A
existing,
would move, well, not according to this.
Yeah,
If you
option,
look at it.
option A removes a portion
See
of
the
that.
line cuts in,
Yes.
Oh, okay, all right, I see.
so it
All right.
greatly narrows it
Okay.
and removes it at the entrance.
All right, so you don't like A at all?
so A was the first option, and we asked, are there other options that could keep the median and keep our
Okay,
trees?
I first said C.
Okay.
But that is very expensive and would take a long time to do. And our friend Jimmy said he would get it done by Friday afternoon, so we would take, is Jimmy here? I don't know.
That's not.
But anyway, if, I would say do the one that is agreeable to West Haven or Southern Land and the cheapest one that we could get. And will take the fewest number of hours to get in.
Well, I'll tell you, option A would probably be that, but West Haven Partners would actually prefer to do option B. Even though it's more expensive and will be at a greater cost to us, we feel like it will give us the look and keep residents happy.
The counterpoint to that is when that intersection ultimately develops, you're pushing that cost and that greater cost onto the city. It will cost you more to deliver a complete intersection down the line than if you do it all now. So option B has a second part to it that we can't tell you exactly how much it'll cost, but it's gonna cost you more than the difference between B and C.
Okay.
So it's about looking at the long-term.
But that might very well only happen if either of those two properties on the north side develop, in which case they'd be kicking in.
Exactly.
True?
Potentially.
Gentry Farms is not gonna develop, it's
How
a land
long,
trust,
how long will C take to get the light in?
or a family trust.
You know, it's gonna take about 6 to 7 months probably to get the design all the way done, and then I'd say another 8 months of construction depending on time of year.
We'll see if we can.
Year and a quarter, year and a half.
I think it's, yeah, year and a half is a conservative estimate to get it done. I think it could be done faster if pushed, but I think a year and a half is conservative if they're moving.
Alderman Peterson.
Well, I have the question. I thought that the preferred green idea would be the swale or open ditch. Isn't that correct? Isn't that what's currently popular?
If you're trying to take some type of stormwater approach to cleaning water, yes, the open ditch does have a benefit. It could have a bigger impact on the gentries, and it could have a bigger impact on the shores. Typically, open ditch have a big impact. A great example of that is looking at the sidewalk project we're doing on Highway 96, how far back those open ditch sections can get onto people's properties.
Well, that's a lot different in a lot of other ways. Not a good.
Generally speaking, open ditch are much
Well, but
Bigger
really,
footprint.
but isn't it the case that that is what is recommended now as
for
the
treating
most?
stormwater, yes.
Yeah.
If land use is not an issue, if the amount of land that you're gonna consume to deliver the intersection is a non-factor, that's true.
Well, if you
So you're
look at-
balancing
well,
different
wait,
needs.
if you look at what you have for C, isn't it
Mhm.
gonna take that much room and more?
It will take more than C.
Okay, other comments from the board so we can give some direction here to.
I'd say B.
So when will this come back for us
We'll
to?
send you a resolution in 2 weeks.
two,
You
three,
can
not A, B.
say A, B, or C.
Or we could,
He said A, B.
we might be able to bring the agreement
1, 2, or
back and just
3
leave
Yeah.
it open.
Well,
for the
if
auction.
we've got direction, we can do a resolution to get direction.
So what you saying?
And then develop a, agreement reflecting that.
I want to do it right the first time.
So we either do it halfway, which would be B, with the possibility of later having to.
It'll
add-
cost more.
Or there's the option A, which was the initial option,
Just to be
and we
simple.
do not impact the north side of the road, north side of 96.
Well, does it take out the whole median?
It takes out a portion.
You'd be left with a
for-
4 or
What's a
5 foot.
portion?
10 feet?
No, it's,
5 feet?
what do you think that is, Paul?
You-
70, 80?
You'd take out the majority of it and you'd be left with a concrete median essentially
Yeah.
for
You wouldn't have the landscape.
150
that-
feet,
that
you'd have
road's
a
wrong.
concrete
50
median.
feet.
That's it, right?
Okay, well, we're gonna bring this back
So-
in 2 weeks with a, go ahead.
When are you gonna bring it back?
Yeah,
You
what's
can tell
the-
us what you want in
What's
2
the
weeks.
difference between, I got 2 and 3 here, not A, B, and C. Tell me again, let's just briefly,
Between
yeah.
B and C.
Because I'm looking at that.
The only
going-
difference between the two is curb and gutter on the outside lane is the only difference.
I'm looking
And-
at this.
Do we have to have curb and gutter?
And
No, you do
drainage.
not. It is our standard, but you do not have to have curb and gutter.
And then whenever the northern side develops, you will be likely putting that in.
Well,
But the point
we'll have
is
to
that
do
We don't have
something.
to
At
put
greater
that in
cost.
there.
somebody else will be helping to pay.
How about the swell? I mean,
Well, the Gentry
You're choosing
side
who's gonna pay.
would not be developed.
I'm sorry, everybody can't talk at once.
It's in a
Who had the
trust.
floor last?
well,
I
I
think
did,
you
but I
did.
want,
Yeah, I think I did.
Or did you? I don't know. I'm confused. I just,
Randy was.
The
he was
likelihood,
explaining.
I think you were asking the
Yeah.
question, what's the difference between B and C?
Yeah, and so you gave me that, but then if it develops on the north side, then we have to come back in and supposedly put curb and gutter if we wanted. I mean, we're not beholden to that, are we? I mean, that's standard, but
You're not,
you're in a more rural area. If you're trying to keep it more, wouldn't you do the swell?
that is an option. You could do that, yes.
And see, we had talked about this one time, about when we go out further, and of course, we could go out further and make it much more urban too as well, but if you're still doing that, and you've got the Gentry Farm, and some of these things are gonna be, you know, hopefully some of these areas are gonna be saved, partially saved anyway. I would prefer to see the swell rather than curb and gutter to give it that more feel and not always have to think we always have to put curb and gutter. So, I don't know. I'm just looking at cost here in the future too. But I mean, I want to do it right up front, and I don't want to have to come back because you know darn well whatever we do in the future is going to cost us more money anyway.
Yeah, you can absolutely do the open ditch. What it does is basically it'll push pedestrian improvements really far back into the property in the future, which is okay, that's acceptable.
Yeah.
It just pushes it back 20, 30 feet back into property
Yeah.
as
Well,
it develops.
Yeah, we're talking 20, 30 feet. We're not talking 100 feet. So, I mean, that's doable.
Yes.
Yeah. I lean in that direction.
Okay, we'll have it back to you with options A, B, C, and
Yeah.
get to pick. And have more questions and comments then. We're gonna defer item 17 to February 27th, 2018, and move on to items 18 and 19 together, which are, these items concern an ordinance for excavations and cuts of the street, and also comprehensive fees and penalties. So we can take both of those together, if that's okay.
We've been looking for some time at how people interface in our roads and sidewalks, and have some proposals for how we might address some changes there. So, Mark, go ahead.
Right, so, excuse me, Mr. York sends his apologies. He had a family matter that he had to deal with this evening. I'd like to also point out that Chris Phillips and Daniel Brady with the Street Department were both key in developing the draft before you. So pleased that she's here tonight to witness this. So the ordinance 2017-44, which is proposed to amend Title 16, Chapter 2, there's really two primary functions for modifying the ordinance. The first is to expand the scope. Currently, the ordinance looks at the street in and of itself. It does not include the right-of-way. And it also adds clarification on administering the permit process and making it more clear and making it more trackable. Over the years, we've had a lot of activities that go on in the right-of-way, not just in the street, and that affects the way we do our business, whether it's on the sidewalk, any number of other obstructions that cause problems for city operations. So therefore, we propose that this ordinance be passed this evening. The ordinance that accompanies it is for a proposed amendment to Appendix A, fees and penalties. That modification looks at increasing the permit fee from $100 to $200. Right now, well, historically, the permit fee was, it was a relatively simple process to track. Street Department currently is going out and doing more inspections and things of that nature, so that administrative burden has increased considerably. So that's why we're requesting that. Also, while modifying, also while we're looking at Appendix A, we're looking at certificates of insurance and a couple other items to make sure that we're consistent with more current rates. So happy to try and answer any questions if you have any, and go from there.
So what, I don't even know what this is about, but you can tell me some other time. I have no idea.
Right, yeah. There's Chapter 16, Part 2 of Chapter 16. Right now, we have any number of activities that occur in our streets. They do borings under the road, they do street cuts, all of those are permitted through the Streets Department. So in doing that, we want to make sure that they're doing things responsibly, they're putting the roads back the way they're supposed to. Any number, so that's really the whole thing. And again, this expands from the streets out to the rights.
And we're seeing a lot of that being done right now.
Yes, ma'am. You had the small cell and all sorts of other things going on. So.
I just have a quick question.
Yes.
If we had this ordinance in place, would that help us with our current problem that we're having? Or issue that we're talking about with the utility, digging up a road, and, I mean, digging up a sidewalk and digging up people's lawns?
They would still have to go through a permitting process, but they still have that easement there. So that's something we'll follow up on.
They still have that easement, but would it allow us to dictate how things are put back?
Not in terms of what's in the easement. In terms of our roadway structures and drainage and sidewalks, yes.
Yes.
But in terms of trees, bushes, that sort of thing,
All right.
I don't know
But
that it
if
would.
their easement runs across people's front yards, okay, and development was allowed to happen years ago, and the easement was part of these people's front yard, would this not help us, or could we write something in here to give us any authority to make sure everything is put back properly for our residents?
I think we're now talking about
Or are we talking-
land rights between, various entities. So you have property owner land rights, and you have the entities that own an easement. And so those are all, I don't think that an ordinance would be able to modify the rights that are within those existing documents. I think we can certainly look at the way we do easements on behalf of the city, but I don't know that it would affect outside entities, particularly entities that have existing easements.
My concern about these easements are that when people come in and they say this is their right to be in an easement, but yet it affects people's actual property or property belonging to HOAs that may have been built 30 years ago. It's just something, and if there's something that we can address in here, I would.
Yeah, I don't know that this would be the
place.
tool to do that.
And
certainly happy to discuss further with you
how we could do
some
that.
potential options.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, we'll be back at 7:15.